Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about Ceres in Gemini in a natal chart. Now, Ceres in astrology can be connected with how one may nurture and care, and how one may receive care and nurturing. Now, given that this is in Gemini, this could be done perhaps through mental, intellectual stimulation. It can be through communication. Um, it could be through variety. It might be nurturing others by giving them mental stimulation, but also giving them, different things to do, not having, monotony. It could also be through mobility, going to different places through many short journeys, not being stagnant. It can be done through things of a dexterous nature. Maybe it could be through learning like auto refrigeration mechanics and just learning in general. Um, this can be or could be like nurturing others by helping others if they have some kind of like mechanical default with their car, and showing your some dexterity by helping others fix problems related to their car or refrigerator, anything that could require the strong use of the hands. Now, another thing too, Ceres in astrology can also be associated with a dissipated self-worth, self-esteem, how one diminished, as far as how you feel about yourself being diminished. Now, given that this is in Gemini, this could be attributed to maybe there may be some insecurities in one in intellectual ability or cerebral ability or ability to comprehend. It doesn't mean that there are deficiencies necessarily, but there might be some insecurities as far as that goes with this person. Now, could also be through communication ability. Maybe there's some self-worth issues that are associated with maybe one's communication ability, or the person doesn't think they're eloquent enough or can articulate things well, or there's something in their speech that doesn't come out in a clear or perspicacious manner. um, a lot, of course, I mean, as far as like the house that it falls in, let's say if it falls in the fourth house, it could be maybe there's some, issues with self-worth, maybe through maybe inability to convey maybe something to home or family members, or it could be losing a verbal debate to a home or family member, or someone you simply feel close at home with. Now, dissipated self-worth might also be tied in. Maybe this person doesn't feel that they're handy enough or can work with their hands well enough, because Gemini, of course, could be associated with dexterity. Maybe there's some self-esteem issues, and people may be down on themselves. It might be due to something connected with gossip or something slanderous, or maybe it has to do with some superficiality, such as maybe learning something but not really getting the full information on it, like not have it lacking the persistence perhaps to learn whatever it is fully, and maybe lacking in diversification or versatility. Those are some examples, but anyway. Now, Ceres in astrology can also be connected with disorders that are associated with eating. It could be some eating issues or dilemmas. And given that this is in Gemini, it might be perhaps by eating too fast. Perhaps it might be like binge eating, but of course very rapid, because Gemini energy, of course, is not notorious for being slow. And Ceres in astrology can also be associated with raising children. And given that this is in Gemini, it might be raising children. If you are a parent, if you have a child, it could be to be communicative, to articulate things well, to be eloquent and verbose, and also being well-rounded and versatile, being able to do maybe many different things, being multifaceted. So if your child maybe tries to do something, some venture doesn't work out with him or her, they have something to fall back on. It could be also encouraging them to be very effervescent, vivacious, be very spirited in whatever it is they're doing, but also to really raising them by being learned in many different subjects, perhaps by being intelligent and anyway, and another thing that Ceres can be connected with, it could be issues where people being, forcibly taken against their will in isolated cases. And this is very, I mean, the chance of this, of course, are very minuscule and minute because kidnappings and abductions, of course, are very rare and isolated. But in the event that it could happen, maybe abductions can take place perhaps over something very trivial. It could be something that might have been, that was said, that was misconstrued, some communication that wasn't interpreted right, and it might involve many cars because of course Gemini energy is associated with local transportation, short journeys, and if an abduction would take place, it could be connected with something that where you're traversing maybe not really that far if the person is if it does take place. So but again, this could be very isolated because most people aren't abducted, but it is associated with that as far as Ceres goes. Now, Ceres in astrology can also be associated with the family connection. Now, given that this is in Gemini, it might be one that might be somewhat superficial, very fickle and mercurial. It might be very vacillating and restless energy. It might be one where maybe you don't always have see everybody when you want to see them because you might be constantly, maybe moving, not necessarily you, but the other person or people and other family members may be very peripatetic and very mobile. In some isolated cases, it could be where there's vicarious energy connected, where maybe you or other family members may be kind of living through each other's accomplishments vicariously on some instances. Now, it could also be the family connections may also involve and consist of a lot of short journeys and having variety, expressing versatility, and maybe doing things with the hands frequently with them, such as again like auto or refrigeration mechanics. But it might be one again that could be rather superficial and shallow as well. I have the moon in Gemini, and the moon of course could be about our home, your family. It could be how we perceive the mother, but it could also be connected with the home and the family life. And I've had a lot of moves in my life. It's a lot of restless energy with my moving, and also some of the connections with the family members I felt were somewhat superficial and not deep, and a lot of that could be attributed to my Gemini moon. But anyway, going on to Ceres in Gemini. Ceres in astrology can also be associated with sorrow, dejection, disappointment. Given that this is in Gemini, it might be in maybe some kind of literary accomplishments or maybe literary ability. Or maybe you wanted to have some literary accomplishments and maybe this was diminished for some reason. Maybe there's some issues and sorrow connected with gossiping or some kind of slanderous lies, maybe prevarication that was connected with you, might be lies that were told about you. Maybe it might be through even some cases vicarious energy, maybe the fact that you might have tried to live out some of other accomplishments of others rather than your own. Those accomplishments were pretty much, you were basically living through maybe someone else's accomplishments as opposed to what you could do, because Gemini energy can be vicarious. Now, in some isolated cases, this could be some sorrow in connection with some kind of identity theft or fraud, because remember that Gemini energy could be about impersonation, it's duality. It could be about being somebody else, being one person one moment, one person the next. So it could be where maybe your identity, maybe had been stolen. But a lot of this, of course, could be predicated and dependent on aspects in one's chart. I mean, if this is really afflicted, say this is making an adverse aspect to Pluto, because Pluto can be about crime, or even something with Jupiter, because Jupiter can be about the law. That could increase that propensity for that, perhaps. But anyway, there might also be some sorrow, dejection, disappointment connection with one's siblings. It could be through vacillating energy, maybe not being able to follow through on things, and maybe dealing with people that are two-faced. Ceres in astrology can also be associated with protective energy. Now, I'm being flippant in this, of course. Maybe it has to do with being protective of one's intellectual rights, but I'm just joking as far as that goes. But also being protective of maybe people you know in connection with slander, or people, being lied about that you may know, is like prevarication. It might be matters with short journeys. It could be, encouraging, people close to you to protect themselves in short journeys, whether it might be having dual airbags in the car or what have you, or having the right protection one person may need if they're going into a neighborhood that they're not familiar with, or if it's a dangerous neighborhood, things of that nature. And as far as short journeys may go. So, and also perhaps even communication devices. People that have this placement may be very protective and possessive of communication devices, whether they're walkie-talkies or their phones, cell phones or computers, or what have you. So Wi-Fi, doorbell, anything that could be connected with communication. But anyway, now Ceres in astrology can also be connected with clothing. Now, I'd say obviously somebody has Ceres in Gemini, it could be about a variety of clothing and some restless energy connected with it. It could be where one has one piece of clothing one moment, then they get tired of it, they want something new, because Gemini energy is the opposite of being monotonous. But also clothing that is very youthful, the person may be enamored with. And it might be a person that could be very communicative and knowledgeable and talk extensively about clothing as well, I would think. Could this person wear two outfits simultaneously? Well, it wouldn't shock me when you're talking about Gemini is connected, with the twins and the two, doing two things, at once, sometimes practically, simultaneously. But anyway, and also, Ceres in astrology can be associated and connected with, at times, it's like the obliteration of things to restore what one may have previously had. Now, this could be like, in some cases, maybe this could be like eradicating certain communications in order to have your variety back in your life, your enjoyment. I mean, let's say this falls in the sixth house as an example. Now, this could be a person that might eliminate or eradicate their communications. Perhaps it could be with people in their daily routine, in order to have maybe to be able to do manifold things, to do their variety of things in their daily routine. Maybe communications with these people might have prohibited them in some degree. So inhibited them from doing what they wanted to do in terms of their activity and variety on a day-to-day basis. That's an example, of course. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.